around a large mountain, and eventually he came to a cave where a sinister heir was moving toward him. When he saw it, he was taken aback because it was a curse that had been crafted by Quack's subordinate, and after that, he allowed the curse to permeate his entire body. He couldn't help but grin all of a sudden since Quack was so angry because things hadn't gone their way. But it worked out perfectly for him because he was in desperate need of mana at the time. He rose up and felt the curse inside his body before the hologram emerged and announced that the amount of death sent by the unknown had increased potentially and exceeded the maximum amount the body can absorb, while his body is now filled with Death Kai. He was overjoyed as a result of the fact that his adversary, who had sent Death Kai, had caused his body to become saturated with yin mana. Because he was interested in putting it to the test, he conjured up the skeleton of an assassin. Following the arrival of the light, the skeleton was revealed. He was perplexed when he first observed the appearance of the skeleton due to the fact that it is not a dark skeleton, and it appears that not all skeletons of great martial artists have their bones turned dark. He is reminded of what Yu Lang told him about the skeleton, and as a result, he begins to contemplate whether or not he should murder the skeleton. That being said, he is rude even though he was a skeleton. However, the undead that he summoned was the spirit of Gu Namseen, whom he defeated a while ago. He instructed the skeleton to hand him his martial arts, but he was shocked because the undead resisted his command. The hologram appeared and told him that he fulfilled their requirement for the hidden quest, but he has to obtain the desire of the undead. Another hologram appeared and stated that the undead is not able to forget his grudge of dying in his hand, and the undead agrees to give his martial arts if Kang will pay with his one arm. His reward was a peak of martial arts flowing chasing ghastly blood claws that Gu Nam used to possess when he was still alive. Kang forms a grin on his face and he will show the skeleton what his place is for demanding one of his arms until he takes out again the skeleton of Gu Nam. He will make him suffer from continued pain. Then he summoned two skeletons for their martial arts so that Gu Nam could reflect on himself until Kang killed him again. He asks again the skeleton of Gu Nam to hand him his martial arts. Afterwards, the hologram appeared again and stated that Kang obtained the hidden quest, which is the desires of the undead 2 and 3. Kang was full of joy because he can obtain the sacrifices of the martial artist if he completes their quest. He will also find out all about it thanks to Yu Lang for transferring his martial arts without even asking, because he doesn't have to learn the first rank martial arts, so he snaps his fingers so that the two skeletons may go back in. But he noticed that the two skeletons were disappointed, so he told them not to be because he had already had a martial art that he wanted to learn. Furthermore, Kang was kneeling on the ground, sweating and gasping for air while a sword was on his side. He is experiencing it again, but it's really trash. He looked behind him and found the skeleton of Yu Lang and seemed to be laughing at him, so he abruptly stood up and said that he was trying his best. Then he lifted his sword and tried again. He releases his yin mana on his sword and the sword suddenly forms a purple light. Following that, he utilized the Kai of the Eastern Shining Sage, followed by the Art of the Lightning Thunder God, and finally the Kai of Thunder Cloud. After performing the 12 Swords of Thunder Cloud with his sword, which had reached its maximum potential power, he raised it above his head and executed the Thunder Cloud slash on the ground. But he immediately muttered an expletive when he realized that he had failed once more because the fissures in the ground were too little despite the fact that he had applied such enormous effort. Kang was of the opinion that there was an extremely large gap between the power of Gu Nam's martial arts and those of Yu Lang's. However, this is not an issue with either the inner Kai or the body. Rather, there is a significant distinction between the two. When the skeleton of Yu Lang suddenly pointed its finger on his back, he was taken aback. He was perplexed, so he turned his head to check what the skeleton was doing, and he discovered that the skeleton was quickly poking its finger multiple times on his back. This baffled him further, so he turned his head again. When he discovers that he has been practicing martial arts with mana circuits rather than pressure points, and that he has not been using all of his pressure points. Because of this, all of the locations on his body that Yu Lang had been prodding are the locations on his body where his mana circuits are blocked off. Kang started to open all of his pressure points as Yu Lang sat behind him and poked him with the Kai of the Eastern Shining Sage. This shouldn't be a problem because Yu Lang has the power to counteract the negative effects of his ability, so everything should be okay. On the other hand, the hologram materialized and informed him that he had achieved the ability of the Peak Swordsman, as well as the skill known as Sword Kai, and that his level had also improved. In addition to that, he is able to unlock other powers such as Corpse Explosion, Soul Barrier, and Phantom Robe, despite the fact that his necromancy has reached the B+ rank, and so on. Kang gradually opened his eyes and it seemed it was a success. To Jinu's home, which is located within the Beacon clan territory. He was sat on the floor, and it looked like he was having trouble controlling his Kai. He persuaded himself that the agony, the cause of which and the treatment for which are not yet known, was becoming more excruciating as time went on. He wrinkled his brow thoughtfully, convinced that it was not yet his time and that he required a little bit more time since he still had stuff to complete. When Nodi came to the door, he was startled and stopped what he was doing abruptly. According to the latter, Jinu's condition has been deteriorating recently. However, Jinu gave him a reassuring grin and informed him that everything was in order. It must be because he did not eat dinner before the exercise session. Then, Nodi comes to the conclusion that the leader must have over-exercised himself in his role as a martial arts leader. However, he reasoned that he was not the one who should be blamed for the situation, and that if he were in his shoes, he would experience the same thing. Furthermore, Jinu informed Nodi that it has been 3 days since Biseung-ju left, and she inquired as to whether or not he was concerned about the situation. Nodi reached for a cup, expressed his concern to the leader, and then inquired as to whether or not it was time for him to take charge of a significant journey by himself. In response to his question, Jinu explained to him that his request was nothing out of the ordinary, so there shouldn't be any issues. But Nodi continued to press his query about whether or not Jinu was concerned, but the latter didn't react, so he stated that he was not convinced with the Japanese Confucius since the appearance of it in the last few days may have simply been a temporary phenomena, and a powerless person can never protect their own interests. The 4 pillars of Pyoguk have already reached a level of strength that allows them to compete with the other 3. However, Jinu was of the opinion that what Nodi had said was correct. If they can discover a justified cause to unify, then Confucius and the 4 pillars of Pyoguk will take control. However, he will never be able to forget the looks of triumph that Shin-won gave him after they defeated the Black Bear. Shin-won's appearance during the confrontation with Jung Bu-young and the gathering in the center of Beacon. The monarch Yu Ho-yeol was the individual who he remembered staring at the most frequently. Nodi suddenly stood up and informed his leader that the movement of the 4 pillars of Pyoguk was nothing out of the ordinary. However, much to their astonishment, someone abruptly opened the door, and they were even more perplexed when they discovered that it was the young master Shin-won. They quickly dropped their heads to meet their young master, and they added that if the young master had informed them in advance that he would be dropping by, they would have prepared refreshments for his arrival. On the other hand, Kang informed Nodi and Jinu that they do not need to prepare anything for him because he does not usually hunt for sweets. He then asked them if they think he should lose some weight and laughed at them. But Nodi was skeptical of Shin-won, so the latter didn't come out of his room. Instead, he gambled away all of his money and roamed aimlessly through the neighborhood. Therefore, he inquires of the young master as to where he has been for the past few days. But Kang chose to disregard Nodi's inquiry and divert his attention instead to Jinu, whom he informed that although he has a lot of things to accomplish, they are not particularly significant. When their young master questioned Jinu how long he would continue to act like that, both Nodi and Jinu were taken aback by the question. Kang grew irritated because it seemed like the two wanted to conceal Jinu's condition, so he ordered Jinu to cease bearing it and warned him that he will pass away if he continues to be in that state. On the other hand, Jinu recalls the moment when Shin-won remarked that he was not powerful in their combat against the Black Bear. As a result, Jinu believed that Shin-won may have realized that he was in a precarious condition because of what Shin-won had said. Because of this, he shared with his young master that at that same moment, the situation was still manageable. "So you'll keep going while it's still bearable?" asked Kang. But Nodi suddenly yelled at Kang and admonished him to be aware of what he said, and he didn't act as though he knew why Jinu had become this way. But both Nodi and Jinu were taken aback when Shin-won suddenly rose up and told Jin-won that he was a lucky old man. This meant that if Shin-won hadn't come looking for him, he would have survived the night. Nodi and Jinu were both astonished by this. Jinu was unsure of what to do, so Shin-won put his hand on his shoulder and encouraged him to stop worrying and to leave everything to him. He then gives Jinu the command to sit on the floor, after which Kang sits behind him. He placed his hand on Jinu's back and let out a force, but the latter coughed unexpectedly and bled from his mouth as the force was released. Nodi, who had been kneeling on the floor and watching them, suddenly stood up and became concerned when he saw blood on the mouth of their leader. However, just as he was about to approach them, Shin-won signaled him to stop and just leave everything to him. As a result, Nodi had no choice but to sit back down on the floor and continue watching them. Kang keeps working to heal Jinu while also releasing a force in his direction. Kang was exerting a great deal of effort, as evidenced by his wrinkled forehead and perspiration. He pondered to himself how the elderly guy could have survived the agony, considering that he would have perished if he didn't arrive in time. When he saw Jinwoo during the fight with the Black Bear, in which he also expended a lot of energy defending him, he realized that the situation wasn't quite as bad as he had feared. He ponders the reason behind the elderly man's and Sam's willingness to give their lives for the sake of others. He tells Jinwoo to keep her strength up because he is going to make sure that everything is removed, and he also gives a little bit of energy to help with the circulation. After that, Nodi observes that the leader of Beacon's face appears to be regaining its normal appearance. He asks himself how the young master did it and looks like his experience helped a lot to think he was also performing the same treatment the young master does. As soon as Xinyun informed him that everything was finished, Jinwoo opened his eyes and was shocked. Thus, he attempted to unleash a force on his body, and he was amazed that all of his energy came back as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, Nodi's mouth dropped because he was surprised to see that all of the poison that had been on the leader had been removed, and he observed that the leader appears to be functioning at his highest level. He then jumped up, moved closer to Jinwoo, and congratulated him, but Jinwoo was still perplexed by what had just happened. Because of this, he questioned him how it was possible, but even Jinwoo didn't know the answer. As a result, they both turned their attention to Kang, who had his eyes closed and was still sitting there. They were unaware, however, that he was thinking about the hologram that had emerged and informed him that he had successfully accomplished the hidden quest. The hologram had also informed him that he would receive the hidden mission Road to Wall 1, in addition to bonus experience gained from the hidden quest. The status window stated that Kang receive a huge amount of yin mana, and the amount of yin heart mana has reached the 4th circle, and because of that, Kang suddenly smiled because by absorbing Jinwoo's curse, he reached the 4th circle and accomplished a hidden quest and even received mana. But he suddenly opened his eyes when he noticed that he was still with Nodi, and Jinwoo and the latter told him that he was forever indebted to him for curing him. Both of them plead to Kang to explain to them how he found out about the poison and how he cured it. On the other hand, Kang told them that he was also poisoned, that's why he knew it, and the two were both surprised when he revealed it. But he told them that it was not a poison but a curse given by someone. When Jinwoo asked him how he knew about it, he explained to them that he didn't find it. Instead, he heard about it from his father. The two leaders were taken aback, and they both dropped their mouth while a bead of sweat formed on their faces. Kang disclosed to them as well that his father had passed away as a result of the same curse. Because Jinwoo was immediately filled with rage toward whoever had done those things to the father of his young master, he clenched his teeth quickly. As a result, he in no doubt asked Xinyun who was behind all of that and who were the other persons aware of the essential information. Kang shared with them that he didn't have any faith in other people. When he learned about the curse, it was already too late to save his father's life and he could not heal him. And because his father was unable to put the family name at danger, he eventually just gave up. Instead, he decides to devote his life to figuring out how he can be saved. He also revealed that the technique he employs is a custom that has been handed down by his family from generation to generation, and that his father miraculously discovered it has the ability to burn everything. It came as a surprise to the two leaders when he abruptly seized his sword and brandished it in front of them. As a consequence, the two leaders were astounded when they witnessed how the sword emitted such enormous force. When they declared that it was a dragon hidden in a magnificent cloud, they were both shivering, and their voices were shaking as they uttered it. They also reported that the skies vibrated in one breath, and thunderbolts dropped to the ground. When Jinwoo mentioned that, once he learned that the sword was called the Thunderbolt Sword, he immediately broke down into tears. On the other hand, when a Thunderbolt Sword was obtained, it was questionable as to why such an outstanding martial arts weapon was not handed down. Yue Lang did not leave his martial arts to future generations. Everyone, including his family, begged him to look back on his decision, but it was useless. It is speculated that the Bigun Pyaguk wanted to remain a representative country, and not a shaman master. Therefore, pride and history improved on one side of the Bigun Pyaguk family's black crest. As a result of this chain of events, Kang is able to acquire the Thunderbolt. It is comparable to owning the most powerful weapon, which can overcome any justification. Nonetheless, he felt terrible for Yu Ho-yol for the life that he endured and swore that he will repay it by ensuring that he and his sons get the revenge that they deserve. He turned his attention to the two leaders and saw that Jinwoo and Nodi were both still sobbing on the ground. He felt terrible about dragging his own body and overworking himself with the martial arts, and he expressed his regret to Jinwoo. And with regard to Nodi, Kang will make amends for those shortcomings until the day he dies, and even after his passing, if necessary. When Xinyun told Jinwoo and Nodi that there's something he wants to clear up with both of them before he can explain the arrangement that his father left behind, Jinwoo and Nodi were both perplexed by his statement. When the two leaders look at him in bewilderment, he suddenly unleashes a great force throughout his body. As a direct consequence of this, the two leaders both drop their jaws and expand their eyes in a state of being dazzled. Both of them couldn't believe the tremendous force of the thunderbolt, and they weren't sure whether Xinyun was actually under the influence of that very vicious energy. Kang explained to them that he was simultaneously employing Yin Mana, and the severing skill that was passed down from the Eastern Shining Sage. No, is this jerk really a Confucian ill? Utter no D. On the other hand, Jinwoo was dazed. He told himself that he only seen that much power from one person in his entire life, and that one person who helped them during the secret attack in Pyoheung-dan 30 years ago. It was the Muram swordsman, Damchin Gun. Is he comparable to him? He added. Afterwards, he called both Beak clan leader Do Jinwoo and Ho clan leader No Di-yoon. He won't say too much but to follow him. Back clan leader Do Jinwoo, I'll be your trusted follower. Utter Jinwoo. Ho clan leader No Di-yoon, I will do everything I can. Utter No Di. They both promised to Xinyun that the Bigun Pyaguk will soar high because of their young master, Xinyun. On the other hand, Kang gave the order for everyone to stand up and said that despite the fact that he wanted to congratulate Jinwoo on his recovery and their resolution, but he was unable to finish his sentence because he suddenly jumped to the ceiling. After that, he threw the body on the ground and informed them that they had an unexpected visitor. On the other hand, Nodi told himself and said that it was a top-secret technique that could fool even the most skilled master and perform the most complex trick. Furthermore, when Jinwoo is close enough to the individual, he is able to remove his disguise and discover who it is. They were taken aback, however, when they learned that the intruder was a member of the Four Pillars of Pyogux. They have known the man for a full decade at this point. On the other side, Kang issues a command to the individual, warning him that he will murder him if he does not divulge who his master was. But the man paid him no mind as he gritted his teeth and continued to ignore him. After a second, his mouth began foaming up and he fell to the ground. Nodi had good intentions of rescuing him, but it was too late because he had concealed poison in his teeth. They were all taken aback when they observed something in the surrounding area of the structure. Right, it's faster to tell them ourselves. Utter Kang. So he walked to the path where they sensed something. Kang leads the way and the two leaders follow him. Sam Bong, just why are you doing this? Uttered the person who was trembling in fear. But Sam Bong raised his sword and struck the target with it. Sam Bong and his companions are dressed uniformly, their eyes all white and seeming mesmerized. He issues an order for his opponent to lay down all their weapons and submit. However, his opponents pull out a weapon in their territory and inquire as to what they are doing. Sam Bong, however, moves in front of them suddenly because he doesn't want to reiterate what he had stated. Did everyone in the Red Cloud faction go insane? Yelled Sam Bong's adversary. But all of Sam Bong's comrades disregarded them and briskly approached them, slashing each and every one of their opponents. But the subordinates of the Clear Cloud faction saw what had happened, so the leader in charge ordered his comrades to form their formation. Even the members of the White Cloud faction rushed towards the Clear Cloud faction, helping them, and joined their formation. Sam Bong told his comrades that their opponent was laughable because they were many, yet they were just a first-rate soldier, so he ordered his comrades to kill them all. However, Small Cloud faction leader Gil came out from a house when he heard the commotion. His subordinates told that it was not right for the family to be shedding blood against each other and they must stop the mess. They saw that the combat had already started, and another person asked Gil not to fight against it. Moreover, Gil asks Sam Bong what is going on. Then Sam Bong explains to them that they have confirmation in the situation that the first young master along with the two faction leaders were planning to ambush the second young master as well as the Red Cloud house. Gil was surprised. He couldn't believe that Jin Sang would do such things. He thought that even if it's due to the fact that his position has been jeopardized from the feast of the first young master. He can't continue his thought because he abruptly asks Sam Bong if he has any definite proof about that. Sam Bong suddenly furrowed his brow because Gil seemed to be doubting them, so he told Gil that those are enemies that rallied behind the wicked plans of the first young master. But Gil shouted at Sam Bong because there could be innocent people among them and they are their family. On the other hand, Sam Bong told Gil that it would all have been fine if he just followed the orders just like he usually does. Then he abruptly strangled the neck of Gil and his subordinate. They can't escape from the tight hold of Sam Bong until they lose their breath and die. In addition, he saw that, like the rat their commander was, the members of the Small Cloud faction should have remained motionless and held their breath instead of standing by and seeing their leader die. He turns to face the terrified members of the Small Cloud faction and asks whether they concur. He vowed to make them at least pretend to avenge their leader if they started to rebel against him. Sambong cursed that their attempted assassination had appeared to have failed when he heard someone telling the guards of the White Cloud and the Clear Cloud to lift their swords high. In addition, as the members of the two factions cheered that their faction leaders had already arrived and that their first young master had come to save them, Sambong watched Nodi continue to hack his swords at his allies. Therefore, he nearly faced Xinyun alongside Jinwoo and Nodi. He said that Nodi and Jinwoo wouldn't be able to handle the toughest blood Asura he had sent in. As expected, Xinyun himself marched into that dangerous region, and he was extremely concerned about the condition of the young master's head. "You idiot, watch your words against the future leader," exclaimed Jinwoo. However, Sambong noticed the word that Jinwoo used, the future leader, and he realized that they have decided to follow Xinyun. On the other hand, Kang approaches Sambong and gestures with his finger at him, claiming that the mentally ill person was Sambong's master, who had cursed his father and brother. When Sambong heard Xinyun's comments, he grew furious and released a tremendous power, pretending he was unaware of the curse being discussed. But when he realized that the young master already knew where their underground location was inside the Red Cloud house, he was taken aback and stopped abruptly. All the members of two factions were confused on what underground area, and cursed their young master talking about. After he did, Kang unleashed his blade and believed that the shadow whisper he had planted across the clan had already told him where they were hiding. Furthermore, he said, "Now, bring it on, wasn't I your main target?" Sambong ordered his allies to kill every member of the Clear Cloud and White Cloud factions as a result, and his allies immediately charged their adversaries. On the other hand, the members of the two factions were ready from the Red Cloud faction. They were shouting to protect their allies. Others said that they have to fight without fear of death, and others shouted to protect their future leader. Everyone wanted to conquer their enemy, so every faction member gave their best to avoid every slash that their opponent released. However, Sambong wanted to kill the young master, so he leaped to assault him. When Kang realizes that Sambong was using the Frost Kai, he smiles unexpectedly. Sambong was about to strike Xinyun, but the latter used his sword to deflect the blow. However, Sambong was too fast. He grinned abruptly upon realizing that the young master was only beginning at his zenith, and that he had fallen victim to his White Frost Ghost Hand, which would cause the young master's palm to freeze solid as yin accumulated. To his surprise, the young master's hand held his blade just fine. On the other hand, Sambong was mocked by Kang if it was his best, and they weren't in a kid's play. Confusion gripped Sambong as he considered how Xinyun possessed such a strong Kai, and Kang believed that Sambong paled in comparison to the undead's yin mana derived from the energy of death. Then, Sambong launched a surprise hand attack on Xinyun, but before he could strike, the latter quickly changed positions and unleashed his Thundercloud Straight Strike. Sambong, on the other hand, realized it was risky and warned himself, but it was too late since the young master had already slashed his sword against his body, causing parts of Sambong's hand to fly. The opponent's mouth dropped in shock upon witnessing what had happened to his leader, while other members of the White Cloud and Clear Cloud faction furrowed their brows in disbelief at their young master's ability to wield and unleash such immense force, and still others cheered and rejoiced upon learning that Xinyun had used the 12 swords of Thunderclouds to secure their future. Still, the Red Cloud faction members dropped their jaws and furrowed their brows, but since their opponent only has 3 zenith, one of them yelled out that they shouldn't be frightened. He tells his allies that the fight has a clear goal in mind. Kang, on the other hand, approached the Red Cloud faction and remarked, "Those guys don't feel bad about flaunting their superior numerical strength." When Xinyun lifts his hand, a member of the Red Cloud side laughs at him and asks what tricks he is preparing. To his surprise, however, when he looks down at his shadow, it grows wide, slowly rises, and suddenly appears as a phantom robe. The individual was shivering in terror as the phantom robes approached him. When multiple ghostly occurrences suddenly materialized before their eyes and slashed their swords into their necks, they were terrified that they collapsed on the ground dead. Furthermore, Kang commands his numerous phantom robes to kill all the members of the Red Cloud faction. That's why those phantom robes abruptly jumped to catch their enemy. Afterwards, all the Red Cloud faction were rushing to escape the phantom robes and said that it was a chaos skill. However, Nodi and Jinwoo furrowed their brows. They thought that those phantom robes may be the one that their future clan leader had mentioned. Xinyun told them that his father hired assassins from Killing Gate as his last mission to protect him, and the top secret assassin group has no known information. They can't even make a request if they can't meet their conditions. His father had made only one condition, to protect him for 1 year. In addition, in exchange Xinyun's father had submitted the 12 swords of Thundercloud and Art of the Thunder God as the request fee. On the other hand, Nodi and Jinu made comments in response to Xinyun's revelation that their clan leader had suffered humiliation for his child and that their family's martial arts tradition is utilized to hire assassins. But for Kang, it was all a lie because there was no other way for him to conceal his skeleton warriors because, if he gives them the ability to wear a phantom robe, which he gains from leveling up, they will be able to blend in with the enemy's shadow and conceal their skeleton bodies. In his haste, he created an arbitrary assassin clan, but it turned out perfectly. Moreover, all of the phantom robes had already eliminated the final member of the Red Cloud faction, and the members of the White Cloud and Clear Cloud factions were astounded by the phantom robes. Some claim that they have to be the subordinates their future clan leader has to secretly train. Others claim that, like their future clan leader, those were overly powerful, following their victory over the Red Cloud, who was attempting to sow discord and usurp their young master's lordship. All of the members were applauding Xinyun, their future clan leader. On the other hand, after Quack and Jin Sang, Kang believed that the only people still opposing them were them. All members of the White Cloud and Clear Cloud factions, along with their leaders, are given the order to proceed to the Red Cloud residence. Led by Kang, they dash for the Red Cloud house. However, it wasn't until he arrived at the front of the Red Cloud house by himself when he realized that members of the White Cloud and Clear Cloud faction along with their leader had slowly disappeared. He assumed that everyone had vanished without a trace, which bewildered him and made him think of the Blood Mist Valley. Perhaps Quack Jusan has engaged in some kind of formation technique. But it's much more effective because no one is around to witness his use of necromancy. Then he walks through the stair to ready the entrance door of the house. Furthermore, out of sheer rage, Quack Jusan struck the table abruptly, sensing that the Red Cloud faction he had deployed to sow discord had run out of energy. Despite the fact that it appeared that even Ha Jiam had lost, he was perplexed as to what had happened to their allies. However, he asserted that no member of the Beacon clan could defeat Ha Jiam's art of chilling in. Out of frustration, he tightened his teeth, reddened his eyes, and showed a vein on his forehead. He believed that his plan was flawless and that the major sect could easily turn against the Beacon clan if their base penetrated Zhejiang. They sent only blood asuras who hadn't been converted in more than a decade, not the generals in charge of fighting. That was undoubtedly insufficient when he was creating his plan. The young master is the one thing he failed to mention because, ever since the day of his revival, everything had gone wrong and he had changed totally, but it doesn't matter for him. In addition, Quack Jusan was enraged. Though his plan failed, all that's left is to kill everyone in the house and turn everything into ashes. If the existence of their sect became known to the world before that time came, he will never survive. But he will never be defeated because he has that power. Furthermore, he noticed a man walking down the staircase. On the other hand, when Kang did eventually enter the mansion, he saw Quack while traveling to the Red Clouds underground. As he explored the basement, he was shocked to see a large number of mummified creatures leaning against the wall. Everything was much above the limit, so he felt Quack was sufficiently insane. "Just what kind of idiot are you?" asked Kang. Quack, however, disregarded the young master and informed him of some recommendations. In 3 months, Quack would elevate him to the position of clan leader and establish the Beacon clan as Zhejiang's top commission clan. However, for that to occur, the young master must first fully regenerate for the sect and then throw him a sword towards Kang. On the other hand, Kang was standing when the sword dropped to the ground. The young master picked up a blade, and Quack grinned unexpectedly. He informed the young master he would offer him fame and money if he went back up and killed every member of the clan. Though Quack believed he had the young master convinced, to his astonishment, the young master suddenly threw the blade in Quack's direction, which he narrowly dodged. Kang expressed his curiosity at Quack's lengthy and unending rant, as well as the number of verses in it. And Quack became enraged over it, widening his eyes and even cursing the young master. "Now, let's carefully shut the disgusting drinking mouth," uttered Kang. Then he unleashed his sword. But laughing at him, Quack wondered what the young master thought was so reckless. He raged at the young master, then, asking whether it was because he had only learned one meager martial technique from his ancestor. Unexpectedly, he gripped his hand and released force, determined to teach the young master the actual meaning of strength. On the other hand, the young master didn't understand Quack's level of power. Suddenly, he called upon his skeletal knights. Then a number of mummies appear to come to life and start moving toward the young master and his skeleton knights. The young master believed the mummies to be ghouls, but they were jiangshis if there was a controlling corpse in the world. At the same moment that he gives the order for his skeleton knights to fight the mummies, Quack gives the order for his mummies to attack the young master. The mummies are being repeatedly struck by the swords of the skeleton knights. However, though it was unlikely to succeed, Quack observed that the young master was employing an odd form of chaos art. The young master comes to observe that the mummies are still attacking them even after the skeleton knights had slashed them in two with their swords, leaving them bewildered. Kang, while observing the fight, in his opinion, each Jiangshi possesses strength comparable to that of a zenith, and using his typical approach to get rid of them was difficult. In Quack's direction, he turned, and it seemed that only Quack was at ease. Their current predicament suggests that Quack Ju-san is attempting to buy time by delaying what appears to be preparations he has been making since he triggered the Jiangshis. Moreover, the young master had just come up with a way to fix the situation once, so he let out a force. When Quack saw it, he became interested in the young master's plans and the inner force he was using. The young master was utilizing a talent called the Corpse Explosion that draws out 60% of the mana heart, and as a result, all of the mummies explode instantly, causing Quack, who witnessed it, to dramatically widen his eyes. Then, the entire house explodes. Afterwards, the young master was suddenly covered by the skeleton knights to keep him safe from the blast. After the explosion, smoke was seen everywhere, and the young master was still alive. Since it was closer, he couldn't believe how destructive his corpse explosion was while he was shaking off his garments. If his skeleton knights hadn't shielded him, he might have been gravely harmed at that precise moment. Though he was curious about what had happened to Quack Ju-san, he searched about to see if he was still alive. He can't finish his sentence when he looks behind him. It was the same power he had used in a past existence, but he didn't understand how Quack had those things. When Quack abruptly appeared on the ground and seemed to levitate due to his immense power, Kang was taken aback. On the other hand, Quack Ju-san believed that Kang was amazed by his power, which is why he was laughing and bragging about it. The young master is asked if he can see his power, which is the power of the one who has been blessed by the demon god. He was shocked to find, however, that the young master was composed and did not show any fear or wonder toward him. How interesting, uttered Kang while looking at Quack. Afterward, Quack became enraged when the young master ignored his power. He thought that even if the young master learned the forbidden art of exploding corpses, there are no more Jiangshis left, and he disrupted the great will of their sect. That's why he decided to take the young master as a sacrifice to their demon god. When he was about to attack, he suddenly stopped and was confused when the young master told him that he was not a species modification caused by a parasitic species, and he doesn't look like a monster and the formation is in progress due to corrosion. Well, maybe I'll get an answer after I beat him, says the young master while forming a grin on his face and clenching his fist. Quack, on the other hand, was so confused and didn't have any idea what the young master was talking about. And because the young master seemed to be ignoring him, Quack clenched his teeth and was annoyed and told himself that he was not afraid of the young master. Afterwards, he spread his arm while floating in the air and releasing power. He claimed that it was the power of someone who received the demon's god blessing. Then his body gradually became ash that mixed in the air until he vanished. Instead of experiencing dread as a result of being exposed to the force of Quack, the young master appeared to be searching for something as he gazed around him. He called upon his bone wall ability as soon as he became aware of anything behind him. Then, without warning, the jagged edge of the bone abruptly surfaced on the ground. It looked to strike something as blood began to spurt forth, and then Quack's arms, which had been pierced on the bone wall, came into view. Quack, on the other hand, was perplexed as to how it took place and how the young master was able to sense that he was present at that location. He then utilized his ability once more and gradually disappeared. Moreover, the young master gave another thorough search for Quack, whose body had now dispersed across the surroundings. And as soon as he became aware of a certain location, he abruptly cried out to his bone wall. Moments later, a bone suddenly rose from the ground, and it snagged another arm of Quack. The agony he was experiencing combined with the rage he felt toward the young master caused him to shake uncontrollably. It didn't make any sense to him that the young master could actually possess that bone wall, so he was perplexed by the situation. Furthermore, Kang moves approaching Quack, who is quivering in anguish at this point. He lamented that it was a shame for Quack because, had he stood slightly more to his left, he would have been able to remove both of Quack's eyes. Quack retracted his arm from the bone wall and prepared to speak. But the young master stopped him off suddenly and explained that a novice rank mist blink will invariably result in a mana distortion phenomenon prior to arriving at its target. The young master also mentioned that he put in a little bit more effort in addition to that. Quack grew furious as a result of what the young master had stated, and he hurled curses at the young master for demeaning the demon god. After that, he let out a force on his body, which was followed by the scattering of countless drops of his blood. Die! Quack screamed, then the drop of blood became sharp and was approaching the young master. In addition, Quack grinned and told himself that he would not be surprised if the young master attempted to cut the flow of blood if he could, because it would immediately burrow through him and drain all his blood once it got a hold of him. On the other hand, the young master chooses to keep his ground and appears uninterested in the expertise of Quack. However, just as the drop of blood was about to strike him, he activated his soul barrier and deflected every single drop of it. When it comes to protecting oneself against spell-related assaults, the soul barrier is unrivaled. On the other hand, Quack's jaw dropped in surprise when he realized that the young master had sidestepped his assault. It was hard for him to accept the fact that his blade veil technique was ineffective against the young master. Quack was uncertain as to whether or not he had already advanced past the level of his capability. He scowled, and then he said to himself, "If I can't do anything against the young master, then I'll go after his underlings, and I'll absorb blood from them." He furrowed his brow, and then he made his decision. After that, he assumes his stance and directs his sword veil ability toward the skeleton knights in order to deal damage to them. On the other hand, the skeleton knights were perplexed by the blood veil that was piercing them all over their bodies. Afterwards, Quack was ecstatic when he saw his blade veil puncture the skeleton knights, and he will now regain his power as a result of taking the blood from their wounds. But his grin evaporated as quickly as it appeared when he realized that those skeleton knights were unaffected by the blade veil he was using, and that they were all remaining motionless. On the other hand, the young master believed that even though Quack continued to poke his skeleton knights, it would have no effect on them because their phantom robes were empty. Quack erupted in wrath. He couldn't believe what was taking place, and the young master calmly avoided all of the assaults that he hurled at him. At this moment, the young master and his skeleton knights were standing in front of him. When one of the skeleton knights draws its weapon, a power that manifests itself as a yellow light, and slashes it, Quack is perplexed. But Quack was prepared because there was no way for him to get away, so the only alternative left to him was to run away once more into the clouds, and he eventually disappeared. Unluckily for him, another skeleton knight was hot on his tail and slashed its sword in his direction as they ran. On the other hand, when Kang witnessed how rapidly the skeleton knight moved and slashed its sword against Quack, he was astounded by how quick the skeleton knight was. He questioned how he was able to ascertain the skeleton's path with such incredible speed while maintaining such a high level of accuracy. On the other hand, Quack was lying on the ground when he was attacked by the skeleton, which severed his body in 2 pieces. The young master approached him and explained that everything was being consumed because the vessel was unable to deal with it any longer. Quack gets the advice from the young master that he should have employed martial arts instead, and he genuinely thinks he can beat the young master by using power from those bastards. Quack questioned the young master what he meant despite the fact that he was having trouble breathing. On the other hand, the young master seemed perplexed, as if he truly did not know. He reveals that he is able to immediately know whose strength is that by looking at the mist blink, the bloody spear, and the bloody thorn. And Quack was using the power that belonged to a vampire lord, a monster with the ability to increase their strength and turn their victims into familiars by absorbing their blood. The creature was designated as a disaster rank and was one of the toughest monsters. But for Kang Taeha, it was just another one of those annoying pests he had to deal with as a hunter. Since a vampire's skills doesn't work on the undead, most of the elimination requests for them were handled by him. He was grateful for all the experience. He was able to figure out immediately that Quack Jusan was using a vampire's power. And in his previous life, no human was able to successfully use the powers of a monster. Transformation, infection, berserk, and explosion. The citizens had to shoulder the damage from the attempts to use a monster power. In addition, Kang had a sudden recollection of a man who was yelling at him to run away. When he spoke to that adult, he addressed him as director despite the fact that he was still a child at the time. Fear caused him to tremble all over. In addition to that, Kang suddenly let out a sigh since he could scarcely remember his own recollection. As he examined Quack while knelt on the ground, he was under the impression that only monsters were capable of making use of corrupted mana, a human being who is capable of employing it without losing their sanity in the process. And he cannot deny the fact that Quack crossed over into a dimension that is not shared by humans. However, Quack was still alive, although struggling. He asked the young master what he meant by vampire because the power that he has was a power from the demon god. He gathered enough strength, that's why he yelled at the Kang, saying that after 1,000 years of long waiting, finally, and his power is the power of the one that has descended upon them, the blood sect. But Kang was still confused. He assumed that when they were going on and on about sects, they were referring to the demonic sect in Mount Tian. But he doesn't want to make any harsh decisions even though it might be a lie. But he thought the 1,000 years of waiting means that there is a secret organization that's been accumulating power without anyone knowing. And the demon god descent means that there is an absolute being that they follow. Afterwards, because Kang has to find out more information, he slams his fist down suddenly on Quack's chest. Because of this, he decided it would be safer to start by destroying his Kai source. And as a consequence of the discomfort that he was experiencing, Quack was yelling about it. After that, Kang raised Quack's body while he was pleading with the young master to put an end to his life while he was being strangled by Kang. But the young master disregarded him and instead reminded him that the anguish he was experiencing was insignificant in comparison to all of the lives of innocent people that he had given up. The young master saw something on Quack's face when he was looking at him, and it turned out to be a skin mask. When he suddenly removed the mask to show his true identity as Quack Ju-san, he was taken aback when he observed that his face appeared to be deteriorating. In addition, something suddenly came to Kang's mind. He saw the body of Xinyun covered by cloth and looked like a mummy, and as a result, he lost his tight grip on Quack's neck and he fell to the ground. Kang was confused and abruptly held his head because it was Xinyun's memory that suddenly popped up in his mind. He saw Quack wearing his real face in Xinyun's memory. While Xinyun was lying in the bed, Quack sat next to him and said that Xinyun was trash before he got buried. Who would have thought that he would become an exceptional talent after taking him out of his coffin? Quack rings a bell and the eyes of Xinyun suddenly open and say that he should rejoice because he will be reborn and become the foundation of the blood sect's will. On the other hand, Kang is able to immediately experience the emotion that Xinyun is experiencing, and the question he had been trying to find an answer to regarding the hallucinations of STmanhawa finally has an explanation. There is evidence of an alternative life for the original Liu Xinyun, one in which he was not reincarnated. The recollections of the future that were presented to him in the form of hallucinations were actually his memories from after he had passed away. And as a consequence of what he believed, he suddenly grabbed Quack's hair and demanded to know everything there was to know about the blood sect. But before Quack could say any words, Kang was astonished because he spotted something in Quack's face. That is the reason why he suddenly released his hair and plummeted to the ground below him. Quack is restrained by another individual since his mental state is deteriorating rapidly. It was necessary for him to put an end to it because he was still locked on information. He suddenly placed his palm in Quack's head. But the mental confinement was too great, and Quack had already passed away before he could do anything about it. Kang decided to waste his time by sitting on the steps because there was nothing he could do. On the other hand, the status window popped up all of a sudden and informed him that he had defeated the vampire lord and had been awarded a mana stone as a reward. It also informed him that he had reached level 35 and his necromancy had reached rank A. He had also received an artifact vampire sword as a first clear reward. But the vampire sword was disqualified because it was a violation of the world's rules. It has been decided that he should receive a scythe melting poison as an alternative award, in addition to the new reward that will be automatically assigned. Kang, however, chose to disregard the message and instead questioned whether or not Quack Wu-san was a monster. He also pondered the identities of the other members of the blood sect. On the other hand, the cloudiness is beginning to lift. Because of this, Jinwoo has given the orders to all of the members of the faction to locate their future clan head and protect him. They were yelling in order to get the attention of their future clan leader, and to inform him that the Red Cloud faction had completely fallen apart. And when they saw Xinyun, they ran towards him, and when they saw that he was still alive, they all rejoiced and were happy that he was. On the other hand, Kang has to face them in order to concentrate on the present moment. He then announced that the combat was finished and they had won, and he raised his sword in celebration. The victory in the war brought joy to Jinwoo, as well as to Nodi and the rest of the members of their faction. Meanwhile, several lights were gathered in a room and it seemed like they were conducting a meeting. One of the lights was annoying because it was the time for their monthly meeting and he seemed bored with their routine. Other lights address him as Commander T and scold him to watch his mouth because the meeting was part of the plan of their demon god. But the commander seems to lose his temper because he was also scolded by the other light, which is Commander Jin. T threatens Jin if he speaks again to him with his tone he will snap his neck. Both of them keep yelling at each other. That's why one of the lights interrupts them and tells them to calm down since they are in the demon god's castle. So they started the monthly meeting and said that they should be able to completely overwhelm it within 3 months. One of the lights has mentioned that there is a slight issue with him. He reveals that an accident occurred in Zhejiang, and the infiltration team that he had stationed there has been wiped out as a result of the event. Everyone is under the impression that the uprising was nothing more than an everyday occurrence, despite the fact that the sorcerers were called in to investigate. After inspecting the infiltration spot where the infiltration squad was eliminated, it appears that the adversary makes use of a powerful thunder bomb. There was a man from the Beacon clan by the name of Liu Xinyun who was responsible for the deaths of one vice shaman and one squad of blood of Asuras. Other lights were furious and claimed that they had been humiliated by faceless cowards, and that it was possible that one of the 8 leaders will be changed in the near future. According to the opinions of others around us, Commander T will be able to repair the damage. In addition to this, they stated that Commander T was obligated to handle the situation with extreme prudence until the appropriate time of the sect, which must be kept secret. I got it. Utter Commander T. They end their monthly meeting, but Commander T seems curious about Xinyun and swear that he will kill him and tear him to shreds. The gathering of happy people was taking place in a bar a few days after Xinyun had finished dealing with Quack Ju-san, and it appeared as though they couldn't wait for their drinks to be brought to them. They were talking about the fight that had just taken place between Xinyun and Quack. A person described as having short black hair stated that a structure belonging to the Beacon clan had entirely fallen. It appeared as though the second young master, Quack Ju-san, and the other members of the Red Cloud faction had vanished entirely. The rumor was confirmed by a second individual who had long hair pulled back into a ponytail. Another individual who had long black hair indicated that the war was an internal fight, and that it all started when the 3 faction leaders of the Beacon clan, Do Jinu, No Dium, and Mo T-gil endorsed Liu Xinyun as the next clan leader. But the second young master, Jin Sang, and his supporter, Quack Ju-san, accepted it, and they staged an ambush when everyone else was unprepared for it. As a consequence, numerous members, including Mo T-gil, were taken out and executed. However, there was only one person who was able to escape the assault unharmed. After that, he inquired his companion, who it was then revealed that it was none other than the incompetent first young master Liu Xinyun. He also stated that the young master displayed his latent potential in martial arts, that thunder struck with every swing of his sword, and that he was given the 12 swords of the Thunder Cloud, which were the martial arts of the first clan chief. The individual with the ponytail had a hard time accepting the fact that what he had heard was accurate. The person with the long hair also added that when Quack was cornered and met his death at the hands of the violent thunder bomb buried in the Red Cloud mansion, the first young master also locked up the second young master, who is high on drugs, which means that he won't allow any more disorder to occur. On the other hand, the individual with short hair stated that such an ancient form of martial arts couldn't possibly be as incredible as it was made out to be, that it didn't make any sense to use the 12th sword of the Thunder Cloud, and that it appears the first master just showed up after the White Beauty blade and the Steel Core blade had already been cleaned. In addition, the individual with short hair was oblivious to the fact that 2 security guards were standing behind him and overhearing all of his remarks. Because of this, the individual with the long hair chose not to make any humorous remarks about the initial young master. Moreover, the individual with the short hair continued talking and added that it would make more sense for Xinyun to be referred to as the young fat phoenix rather than the young phoenix of the Beacon clan. After saying this, the individual laughed at his own joke. In addition to this, he stated that, according to what he had heard, the Beacon clan's internal troubles have been chaotic. None of the other members follow the first young master, and as a result, the future of the Beacon clan may also be chaotic. When someone grabbed his shoulder, he was taken aback to discover that there were 2 security guards standing behind him. When they asked him if he was finished talking and encouraged him to come with them if he was concerned that the 2 guards may overhear everything that he said. Afterwards, the person with short hair was given a beating by the 2 guards because they believed that they were interfering in the business of others and conversing with others behind their backs. He was groveling on the ground, shivering with panic, and pleading with the guards to spare his life while blood trickled down his nose. If he continues to mess around with his tongue, one of the guards warns that he will put him in danger of losing his life. The individual abruptly bowed to the 2 guards that he would never do that again. Then, without warning, he dashes away before the 2 guards can reconsider their decision. On the other hand, the guards were having a talk about the rumor that was circulating, which stated that the Hwang Rock clan had been spreading false stories about their region. And it wasn't just the Hwang Rock clan. Other small and medium-sized merchant groupings, as well as the Kowloon group, have also been exhibiting some very weird behavior. People were interested in learning more about their strategy, but at the moment they are only working on the commission they have already accepted, so they are unable to take on any more customers. It makes no difference to the two guards what other people think of them, and their faith is greater than it has ever been. When they considered how their Beacon clan will develop in the future, their hearts began to shake. Meanwhile, Sam was standing just outside the door of the room of his young master. After wishing him a good night's sleep, he exited the residence. As Sam continued on his way out, he reflected on his young master, who had recently taken over as the new owner of the Thundercloud House, the residence of the clan leader. It's finally quiet now that everyone in the family has agreed that the young master should take over as the future head of the clan. On the other hand, because it had been 5 days since the tragedy, he was concerned about his young master, because he was so interested in finding out what his young master was preparing. He didn't get any sleep at all. On the other hand, it looks like Kang is meditating inside of his room. He stated that he had finally removed their suspicions and recalled all of their spies, which was quite appropriate for a blood sect, and it was fortunate that he responded so promptly. As soon as he finished dealing with Quack Ju-san, he started telling every member of the clan an entirely different version about the uprising of the Red Cloud faction, its repression, and Quack Ju-san's violent end. There is only one reason this was done despite the enormous amount of mana it took, and that is because he possesses a skill called memory manipulation. Those individuals lack the mental capacity to comprehend the true nature of the blood sect. During the fight with Quack Ju-san, Kang gained new insight into the level of insanity and bloodshed that pervaded the blood sect. Nobody in the clan would have been able to stay alive if their identities had been disclosed. However, he was able to buy himself some time by ensuring that even in the event that the blood sect requires someone to target, the focus will be on him rather than the clan. Summon cancel. Utter Kang. Afterwards, Kang sent forth his shadow whisper, and it landed in an unexpected fashion on his feet. It would have been challenging to observe in real time if he did not have a shadow whisper at his disposal. It was impossible since all 200 members of the clan had a summon of 5 days, even if his mana was full, and at his 4th circle, yet it would have been conceivable for him to have the mana stone of the vampire lord. It was an ore that had been removed from the heart of a monster, and it has a substantial quantity of mana. The rank of the mana stone depends on the rank of the monster that the ore came from. Kang closes his eyes and lets out a force. He has no idea why a monster's mana stone emerged from Quack Ju-san, but he finds this to be a relief. If the blood cult is a covert organization, then they will never expose themselves by assaulting in the open. Therefore, he needs to work on getting stronger till such time as it arrives. He sneaks a peek inside his room before giving instructions to his 2 skeleton knights to keep his door locked at all times. After that, he activated what he called his pocket dimension. It was a void that had been created in the fissures between dimensions, and the caster could only bring inanimate objects there with them. However, Kang begins with the weapon that was recently gotten, and it was a scythe of melting poison. This is a mythological item that was utilized by sages who have powers that are above normal human comprehension. One of the treasures, if the user does not have the body of a sage and the energy of a sage, then they should not dare to use the power that is within. In addition, Kang takes hold of the scythe of the melting poison, which is heavier than he had anticipated but still manages to fit comfortably in his hands. It was unusual because it was a weapon he was using for the first time, yet he feels like they've been together for a long time. He slashes it suddenly through the air to test it, but he felt strange. He paused and pondered that the phrase leading sage might relate to the owner of the item or the person who created it, and that the phrase authority might be referring to an additional talent that was included within the treasure. And with regard to the unreleased, he ponders what it is that he needs to do in order to free it, or whether he ought to give the Yin Mana Kai of the Eastern Shining Sage and the Kai of the Thundercloud a combined shot instead, then let go of force and assign it to the scythe. But as he was doing it, he was taken aback by the fact that the scythe's emotion that was being sent to him was anger. However, Kang stopped sending his Kai to the scythe because it was a superior grade item with a personality an ego weapon has to obtain. Since the weapon selects its owner, it was something that can't be obtained even with the skills or money. On the other hand, the hologram appears and notifies him that he failed to use the treasure because he has no natural power in his body, and the natural power must be replenished. Kang suddenly felt confused regarding the natural power that the hologram stated, so he asked the status window to show his martial status. The hologram stated that most sage bodies are born naturally, but there are cases where people obtain a sage body as a result of bone grinding effort. Furthermore, Kang thought that it looks like the treasure uses natural power, and he can't even use his ego weapon after obtaining it. He asks himself how he can obtain the natural power that was required to use the treasure. He has no other choice but to bring back the treasure on the pocket dimension because he can't even release the sword Kai since the treasure rejected its Kai. That is why he can't use the scythe as a weapon right now. However, he needs to strengthen his actual combat strength. He suddenly turns to the pocket dimension so that he can finally take those guys out. Come forth, utter Kang. Then numerous people came out of the pocket dimension and released a power on his hand. There are 20 skeletons of Zenith intermediate rank, and their combined strength is comparable to that of the majority of medium-sized martial clans from Kang's pocket dimension. And the lone skeleton that stood in front of Kang was constructed out of Hajayam. He began to question whether or not he was actually a mage because the summon had the statistics of a frost mage, but the man's strength and agility were off the charts. However, all of the martial arts that the skeleton has mastered are demonic arts, which means that he is unable to utilize them right away. If it was discovered that he was working with subordinates who practiced demonic arts, then everyone would rush forward to kill him. In addition, turning that guy into a skeleton would be an extremely inefficient use of resources, and if the system had recognized him as that thing, then he would have undoubtedly been returned to his pocket dimension. Kang believes that he has completed everything that has to be completed, and that the time has come for him to put the most crucial thing into action, after which he will grab a pillow and lay down on his bed. Information is the single most critical resource that he needs in order to successfully defend himself and defeat his foe. But he does not have any information about the blood sect, a recollection for which he has no idea how he will search, and in which he was unable to hear the most crucial section as if it had been muffled. On the other hand, the hologram materialized and made a statement regarding the mental image projection. It had a rank of a plus, and after using it, the caster had the ability to recover from the harm caused by mental type skills. Additionally, it required a portion of the caster's soul to be separated before it could be used. Kang, on the other hand, closes his eyes as he prepares to employ the previously obtained skill for the first time. Afterwards, his spirit abruptly separated from his body, and he was victorious as a result. But he has a foreboding feeling, as if he were entering a place from which he will never emerge again. However, if he is unable to rid himself of the terror that he experienced, then he will instead be consumed by it. Therefore, he makes a swift descent and enters Xinyun's body. He screams out in anguish as he enters, and he has the sensation that his skull is going to explode. He was aware of it. It turned out that the owner of the body had certain issues. When he fell into a spot, he was perplexed, and he was even more surprised when his foot stepped on the water, and he saw his own image as Kang Taeha rather than as Xinyun. He questioned why he was being reflected, as well as whether or not it was him before he passed away. In addition, his reflection in the water evaporated all of a sudden, and it was replaced with a memory of himself when he was much younger. He had no one to talk to because both of his parents had been killed by monsters when he was little. Because he had no family from the time he was born, he spent his childhood moving about from one orphanage to another. After that, he became acquainted with Park Hyuk-jun, who, together with other abandoned youngsters, was the one who raised all of them. However, the worst incident that occurred was when Park fought with a monster in an attempt to save him, and as a result, Park lost his life. As he makes his escape, he makes a solemn oath to himself that he will exact vengeance upon those monstrous individuals. After that, he met Yo-Jeju and persuaded him to sign up for Griffin's Guild due to the fact that he was the immortal king. Yo assures him that he will assist him in identifying the person responsible for the incident at the orphanage, and will also assist him in exacting his vengeance. And because of Kang's grudge, Yo has a secret plan. He can easily gain the item that he's been seeking for by using Kang's skill, but Yo didn't know that Kang already possesses the thing that he's been looking for. However, when someone unexpectedly asked Kang if the world belonged to him, he was taken aback. When he turned around, he saw Xinyun and broke into a broad grin because at long last, they finally met one another, and prior to this meeting, Kang had the impression that it would be disorderly for another person to exist in his mental worlds. And because only his own soul is capable of taking on a reasonable shape in the mental world, Xinyun has been hiding all this time and is only appearing now to retake his body. If this is indeed the case, then he needs to make himself ready for battle. It would appear that Xinyun is able to read his thoughts because he reassures Kang that he does not intend to injure him and tells him not to worry about it. Instead, Xinyun's only desire was to be of assistance to him. He had no other wishes or desires. Furthermore, Kang came to the conclusion that Xinyun was likely not antagonistic since he could unequivocally sense Xinyun's sincerity being communicated directly to him. It is an effect brought about by the union of the souls of two different people in one physical body. On the other hand, Xinyun stated that he will deliver something that couldn't possibly have been sought after. Suddenly, the space between them was divided in half, and they moved into the new space that was created. They proceed inside till Kang spots something in the room. When he looked at the picture of Xinyun, he realized that it was a memory of the day that he woke up inside Xinyun's body. The other side is, he couldn't continue his sentence when Xinyun intervened and said that the day of his funeral, the world's timeline split into two paths. Something caused the world to remain the same, but now two different paths have been created. But Kang interrupted Xinyun and said that he thought he knew what it was, the nameless stone that he possessed. So there exists a timeline where he woke up in Xinyun's body and one where he didn't. After Xinyun saw the nameless stone, the latter let out a sigh. In addition, if Kang believed that the future he saw was the recollections of other people's experiences that Xinyun had been through, then his goal is now crystal clear. When he was on the verge of entering a portal, Xinyun warned him that he will regret everything and that he may spend the rest of his life in anguish because he was consumed with terror the way he felt at that moment. Try devouring me if they can. Utter Kang then enters the portal and leaves a warm smile at Xinyun.